Okay, this supplemental video is going over the warm-up, that I should have gone over for this lesson. I think I accidentally, when I was looking at this thing here, somehow instead of reaching to this warm-up, I reached to this warm-up, and that was not correct. So I apologize for that. In any case, let's go ahead with this one. What is the exact solution to this equation? Looking at all the answers, you should be thinking this probably requires quadratic formula. Since all the answers look like they are, plus or minus a square root, although notice they're not plus and minus a square root, they kind of split those up. But okay, let's get this right. 1, 2x squared equals negative 4x minus 7. Get all the terms on one side, 0 on the other. 2x squared plus 4x plus 7 equals 0. Quadratic formula, x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times 2 times 7 divided by 2 times 2. Okay, x equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 4 times 2 times 7 is 56 over 4. So this equals negative 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 40 over 4. Well, 40 is 4 times 10, which makes the square root of 40 2 times the square root of 10. So negative 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 10, but we also have a negative inside, so that comes out as an I. And you can see that there's a 2 is a factor of this and this and this. So if we factor it all out, we should get negative 2 plus or minus I times the square root of 10 divided by 2. And, you could make a case for splitting this up, like make this negative 2 over 2, negative 1. But then you'd have to have this like I times the square root of 10 over 2. I can see from the answers here that actually they didn't simplify it. They've taken what I've got here and they've just split it off into these two right here. So that should have been those two, okay? 2. What is the solution set to? Okay, looks like another quadratic formula. X squared plus 6x plus 13. So you might ask yourself a question, where's the equal sign? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know whether they meant to say equals 0 or they wanted you to say no solution, letter D, because this is not even an equation. Because the right answer here is there's no solution because it's not an equation. My guess is that they didn't do that. They just didn't write equals 0. Let's see what we would have gotten if we treated it that way. Right, that would have been x equals -6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 13 divided by 2 times 1. X equals -6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 52 divided by 2, which is -6 plus or minus the square root of -16 over 2. X equals -6 plus or minus 4i divided by 2, which is -3 plus or minus 2i. Now, if they meant it to be equal 0, then the answer is A. If they wanted you to notice that it's not even an equation, then the answer is D. And finally, which one of these describes the roots of the equation? Okay, so that's another quadratic equation. If we solved it like we solved the first two, we'd be able to tell if we had imaginary solutions. If we had imaginary solutions, then we would get two answers, plus or minus, and it would have an I after it. If it didn't have an I in it, we would see either we get two solutions or we get one solution. That's something that would just come out of solving the quadratic equation. They kind of what they want you to do in a problem like this is to just calculate the discriminant, meaning if all you know is what number is underneath the quadratic formula, the square root in the quadratic formula, then like this one, as soon as you saw -16, you knew it was going to be 2. This one on top, as soon as you see the square root of -40, 2 imaginary. That's it. So if I was going to do it that way, just because I know that is kind of what's supposed to be happening in a problem like this, then I would only be calculating what's inside the radical. And if you remember the radical, the formula inside the radical is b squared minus 4ac. So that would be 8 squared minus 4 times -5 times -1. And that is 64. Okay, all these minuses, these two make a plus, which means we still have this minus 4 times 5, which is 64 minus 20, which is 44. And since 44 is greater than 0, we have two real solutions. And that would be B. Now, the other thing you can do is you can go to Desmos and just put it in, right? And Desmos if it crosses the x-axis twice, that's got two real solutions. In this case, this is a parabola. It opens down because of the minus, so I could go out a little bit. How far would I have to go? Way too far. That can't be right. I think what I have to do is I have to make that a y. Okay, now let's go back. And you can see the two answers that are right there. If, for example, it was like that, you would say no solutions because it doesn't cross the x-axis. If it just barely touches the x-axis, and that would be hard for us to make this one do because it's actually, like if I go up 3.5, I need to go. If it's something like that, that it just looks like it touches, that means one real. So I should have said, if it goes like this, that means two imaginary. If it goes like this, that means one real. If it goes like our problem actually was, which is like this, that means two real. 1, 2. Okay.